Welcome to the worldwide headquarters and studios of All Duke Sports Talk, where all Duquesne sports fans can unabashedly and fully indulge in everything Duquesne University sports. So, without further ado, let's get to it. And let's go Dukes.
Hey, Dukes Nation. Welcome back to All Dukes Sports Talk, your favorite YouTube show and podcast. We are joined once again by Nick Frost and Rudy Longarini. I'm Bob Healy, and our special guest this week is WPIXI multimedia journalist, reporter extraordinaire, and Duquesne media alumnus, Andrew Havranek. Andrew, somehow we did not cross paths while you were a student. You came on after I was a student there, and you finished before I became faculty. But we were together at Mike's Beer Bar watching the Dukes lose to Illinois, and it's nice to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Guys, let's hop right into the Duquesne men's basketball performances lately, or maybe lack thereof. We're not making many buckets. I thought I'd wear my Lakers hat to see if I could entice Luka Doncic to join Duquesne now. We might need that. Duke's got a visit from LeBron James when they were in Philly playing St. Joe's, and that didn't seem to help much, none either. The Dukes losers yesterday. That was Saturday, February 1st, 62-53 to UMass at home. We always record on Sunday, so today is Groundhog Day. It's been a bit of Groundhog Day lately for the Dukes. The game before that, January 29th, at St. Joe's, the Dukes lost 76-72. That game was much closer than it was closer on the final score than it actually was on the court. The Dukes are losers of their last four in a row, rather, in conference play. Going back, their last win in conference play was at home against Bonaventure, 75-57 on January 18th. Let's go to Andrew first. Andrew, what's the story? We know they're not making free throws. We're not making much of anything anymore, and we always seem to be in foul trouble. Is that pretty much it? Is there anything else going on that's hurting the Dukes this bad?
I mean, they're just not scoring. They're yesterday 31.7% shooting on offense. I mean, when you are going up against, UMass, yesterday, even earlier in the week against St. Joseph's, that score is a little bit closer, but they're just not able to generate enough offense to pull out some of these games. Even some of these close ones that they've had, when you look at the final score and the results for some games going back a week or two here, they've been in some close games, but they're just not scoring enough to really make any sort of separation there.
Nick, the foul trouble, right? I mean, it's just all the bigs too. You combine that with our injuries, we're just coming up short.
Yeah, Netchis said before the road trip to even St. Joe's that he's fighting through some leg issues. Actually said he would be willing to die for this team if he had to, which was a pretty cool quote. So if you haven't seen those interviews by our friend Zach Weiss, definitely check in. And Coach Drew Joyce had a good interview with him as well, where they acknowledge that everybody's beat up this time of year. They need to be mentally tough enough to fight through it. I mean, mental toughness is great, but if everybody's beat up to the point where their play is affected, like I think has been happening, then these results are going to happen, especially with, like you said, that combination of foul trouble, especially with the bigs. When we don't have Dixon being able to play his rim protector role because of foul trouble, and same with Netchis, then the teams are going to be able to drive on us, and we're not going to be able to stop them. And if we do foul, then they're probably going to make more free throws than we do in that situation.
Rudy, is looking at injuries. We haven't seen DeMichael in a while. We know that the A-10 is clustered. The Dukes are 4-5, but if they were 5-4, they'd be in the top four. As it is, they're in the bottom four, right? So it's a very clustered segment of teams. Is it worth not redshirting DeMichael? Was it worth bringing him back if he's healthy enough to contribute? Is there still a reason to be optimistic? They're not as far away as maybe the last four games have shown.
Well, it's up to the team to figure it out. I see it as a situation where, like I said before, Bear and Beebe said 2 weeks ago, was that Drew is a new coach. And there's going to be growing pains, particularly in league play. I don't think any coach I've ever seen in the A-10 come in on his first year and have success. Maybe there's been one or two, but they had previous experience. Okay. which Drew doesn't. Second of all, the free throws, dude. You mentioned the other day, or you mentioned just the other day that you went to your girls' game that you were coaching, and the girls were the how old is she?
Well, my fifth and sixth grade girls rec team makes a higher percentage of free throws than does
Right.
right now.
So there you have it. And so nothing needs to be said. All I can say is that there's a couple of consistent guys. Nexus is consistent. Rozier is consistent. Maybe not to the level that we expect them to be on a successful game, which happened these last two games. But you know what you're going to get with those guys. It's the Dinkins, the Crawford. Well, Crawford, you also know what you're going to get. And it's Dinkins and Corbett that have been slightly inconsistent. Okay. We don't have the major scorer, like you mentioned, like Clark or Day to turn to in the pressure situations. And that is a big fallacy. And it's going to have to be dealt with as a team thing, you know? And so the answers are within that locker room, like I stated.
Well,
And
I think, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rudy.
the answers are in that locker room, as I stated before. And yeah, we're just going to have to, I'm bummed. I'm just disheartened by the whole situation, but I can't be, you know, I have to look at it realistically that this is a first year head coach and there's all new players, and that's what we got.
Well,
Those are the results we got.
I have the same feelings about the lack of star power and explosive offense that can bail Duquesne out. There is obviously no Jimmy Clark anymore, no Day Grant. And the leading scorer for the Dukes men most every night is under 20 points. You're looking at games where if you get 15, 16 on your leading scorer, you're like overjoyed, and no one's going off, no one's rescuing us. And maybe you don't need that if you play good enough defense. Maybe you don't need that if you make your free throws, but we're not doing enough of that. Now the good news is, I think going forward, yes, it's Drew Joyce's first year. Yes, he's going to have some growing pains, and that's expected. I'm of the opinion he was the right choice and still is. You just have to deal with, maybe he'll be better off or better at pulling out close games as he gets more experience as a head coach. But you're only going to lose Corbett and Dinkins from the team next year. Now, we know, of course, with transfer portal being open and with NIL money out available other places, maybe you don't return everybody who's not a senior. But other than Corbett and Dinkins, Alex Williams is the only other senior. He'll probably return with a red shirt because he hasn't played. Max Edwards and Cam Crawford are redshirt juniors. Matus Ronsky and Chabi Barre and Kareem Rozier and David Dixon are all juniors. Jake DeMichael might be back as a redshirt sophomore, right? So, Eli Wilborn will come back as a junior next year. Jakob Netjes will be a junior next year. So that's a strong nucleus of players, many of whom were on the team that won it all 2 years ago. So, I don't think that, if this year doesn't end up like last year did, that there's any reason to throw in the towel or be terribly upset with Drew Joyce. I think keeping it in the family like the university did with Drew, and we see words like Netjes saying he would die for this team, with leaders on this team like Dixon and Rozier, I'm still of the opinion that the arrow's pointed up and for this program overall. But it is very frustrating knowing the talent that they have on this team to have lost these last 4 games. Andrew, as a reporter or as a fan, you decide, you choose. How do you feel about what I've just said in terms of the long term and about this season?
I agree with you as a fan and as a reporter, both. I think, and you and I had talked about it before, that I think with Coach Drew, there were people online, and we talk about, what the opinion is when there are things out on message boards and things like that. People get discouraged when you think, you're watching that game against the Island Eye last year, and you feel like, oh my gosh, the Dukes made it to the big dance. They made it to the tournament. They won that first round. They get to the second. You almost feel going into that game hey, this is a house money sort of situation. Dambrot retires. They keep everything in house, which I agree with you. I do think that was the right decision. I still have a lot of faith in Coach Drew, but it's growing pains. And I think that's what a lot of fans, myself, and, Rudy said he was disheartened and, just bummed about everything. I think that's something that we all just have to, as fans, and I'm putting my fan hat on here, just sort of come to terms with a little bit and understand that, hey, he doesn't have as much experience doing this head coaching. He doesn't have any here. This is his first gig doing the head coach sort of sole role. And I think things will get better, but just right now it's tough.
Nick, final thoughts on the Duquesne men before we move into some more positive news with the way the ladies are playing.
Yeah, we've still seen the highs of this team, so you can't be too discouraged where if they do play their A game, they still can beat just about everybody. So that's still there. It's not because the teams stopped us from playing a certain way. We just need to get back to that. So we'll see. Health is definitely a big part of that as well, but the message boards I think are a little too negative. They're always a little too negative in my opinion. But I do think this team still has what it takes. It's just going to take a little more team first mentality when it comes to offense and finding that rhythm. So they can get back to the drawing board and try to find that success that they had to start conference play.
Look, it could be a lot worse. This could be the comment sections on Pirates message boards these
You're
days.
not wrong. Or the Bob, Mikey and Big Bob comment reading after Steelers lose.
Right. Well, let's hope the Dukes bring that A game that Nick was talking about February 5th. That's this coming Wednesday at Richmond. You can catch it on ESPN Plus. It's a 7 p.m. tip-off, and then the Dukes return home February 8th against Loyola Chicago at 6 p.m. the UPMC Cooper Fieldhouse or CBS Sports Network. Then the Dukes have a week off until they go to Dayton to play on USA at 2:30 p.m. February 15th. So you get right for a couple games, you gear up for the big Dayton game, and look, they are really still one game out of the top four. It sounds crazy to say, despite their swoon recently. So my message to Dukes Nation is keep the faith. It's not going to happen every year where you're going to win the whole thing and win a tournament game. It'd be great, and we all want that. But maybe as Clint Hurdle used to say, right? Speaking of the Pirates, feelings aren't facts. Okay, let's talk about some really good facts, though, and that is that the Duquesne women seem to have figured some things out. They destroyed St. Bonaventure earlier today on Groundhog Day when we record. A 1 p.m. tip-off at St. Bonaventure. The Dukes led that game. If not from start to finish, I can't quite remember statistically. They more or less dominated, though, from start to finish, winning 80-46. And before that, the Dukes won at home against VCU on Thursday at an 8 p.m. game. That game was on Peacock, and I had to subscribe to watch it, but I did. So congrats, NBC, you got me. 69-59, the Dukes won that game at VCU against VCU. The Dukes have now won 4 games in a row, all conference games. And actually 6 out of their last 7. And the Dukes look really good lately. The Duquesne women stand overall now at 15-6, and they are 6-4 in the conference, which is good for right now. They are in a 6th place tie, and they are a half game out of that double bye, chasing Dayton and UMass both at 7-4. Nick, you probably follow the women closer than the rest of us do. I'm going to come to you first on what you like out of the ladies, although I'll lead with this. Very, very pleasantly surprised with how impactful Mackenzie Blackford has been.
Yeah, all the freshmen really that have been playing key minutes. Bert talked about that after the VCU game, and man, they shined even brighter against the Bonnies today. Mackenzie Blackford, Raina Green, Nadia Moore, Faith Walker, and also Fatou Sane, who seems to be trying to find a way to get more minutes with her good contributions each week. All great contributors, all true freshmen, or I think Raina and Fatou might be redshirt freshmen, but 4 years of eligibility still for each of them. VCU, I want to start with. Meg alluded to it in the postgame presser. In the fourth quarter against VCU, when they lost earlier this season, they noticed a style that they could respond with that would frustrate VCU, and they used it, and it worked really well. They keyed in on VCU's star offensive player. Meg frustrated the heck out of her, drew 4 fouls very early on, I think in the third quarter, and that was really it. Whenever they stopped her key contributions, VCU couldn't get anything going on offense. We played a terrible game offensively. Bert mentioned that most teams and coaches say defense wins championships. In basketball, you need to put the ball in the basket, as the men have shown. Doesn't matter how great your defense is. If they did make some of their open shots, they would have blown VCU out as well. So they're playing really good basketball. The shooting isn't consistent, but Mac Blackford is very consistent at putting the ball in the basket, as you alluded to, Bob.
Rudy, the women, I know you haven't had a chance to come watch in person yet, being all the way across the state, but have you been catching them on streaming? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Yes. I'm just looking at the box score for the St. Bonaventure game. They basically led from start to finish and by big margins. And also, my girl Kiaku did well. Had what is it, 14 points? I think here I'm seeing 14, 15 points. So they're getting the complementary scoring, which is what I desired and talked about when they were losing. McConnell is bringing her B or A game every time, and it's the supporting cast that has to pick it up and support her, give her, just a little bit of breathing room and have some scoring other than her. And that's what they've been doing and Blackford in particular, like you mentioned, Nick, is really coming through. And so, very good what I'm seeing from the women, polar opposite of what the men are offering. And I couldn't be happier with the women. And, they started 0-4 in the conference and they've turned it around. And I said that about the Dukes when they were in the winning streak, that they turned it around. So I'm going to be turning around light. Okay.
Well, listen, they were only 0-3 to start, but I know I get your point.
Okay. 0-3.
I get your point. Hey, Andrew, what was mentioned on the broadcast today when I was watching, was that the depth of the Dukes and their ability to almost do a wholesale line change and bring in fresh players who run that intense full court press system. That's just so hard for anybody to keep up with. And when they play a team like St. Bonaventure, they just overwhelm them into turnovers. What do you see in Andrew in terms of like a ceiling for this women's team? Are they starting to is everybody, the 10 that they rotate in starting to understand that system now? Because it is new to the team this year. Have they bought in? Can they possibly go on a run that the men did last year?
I think they are. I think they are buying in. And you had mentioned, and all three of you had mentioned sort of that secondary scoring. I was taking some notes earlier today. The game against VCU, there were 29 points off the bench. Today, 42 points off the bench. And we've talked about Mackenzie Blackford. She was coming off today. She had 14 points. She was coming off the game with LaSalle. I'm sorry, I'm looking. Yeah, 12-point game at LaSalle, and then her 20-point career high against GW earlier this month. She is able to come in and put up numbers, and we talked about the men not being able to put up these points. Their top scorers not even really breaking 20 all that often. But you have Blackford that's able to come off the bench, not starting a game and putting up numbers. I think that is incredibly optimistic, and the fact that she's just a freshman is incredible. So I do see a really high ceiling here, and honestly, I think they're fun to watch. I think right now that's the really good bright spot with the Duquesne basketball program, just as we sit here on February 2nd, 2025.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of watching this team play. I'm looking forward to my third and fourth grade girls are going to play at halftime on February 12th. And that's going to be super fun. And we're also going to go to National Girls and Women in Sports Day coming up on February 9th. So we're really looking forward to that. That's something you can sign your girls up for to not just learn from the women's basketball team, but I think rowing and acrobatics, and a lot of them will also be there before the game on February 9th. So that's a week from today at 2 p.m. The Dukes will play at home against Richmond on that National Girls and Women in Sports Day. There's the pregame skills clinic. There's postgame autographs. So check out goduquesne.com to be a part of that. Again, it's a 2 p.m. tip-off at the Coop. It's also on CBS Sports Network. Before that, the Dukes will play at Rhode Island on Wednesday for a 6:35 p.m. tip-off. I haven't seen any kind of streaming information on that, although I would presume A10 game, it's probably ESPN+, but for some reason I'm not able to see that. But the Dukes have these next two games, and then February 12th versus UMass at 6 p.m., and it's all A10 down the stretch here. I think the Dukes can beat any of these teams, and I love the fact that as the season has gone on, they are getting better. So as Rudy said, it's like a polar opposite feeling. The men seem to be bottoming out, and maybe it's darkest before the dawn with them, and hopefully with the women, it's not a sort of false dawn, and then they just keep this up. And looking for the future, the Dukes ladies, they're going to lose Gabby Hutcherson, who's a grad student. Keandra Brown and Megan McConnell are seniors. You're not going to be able to replace Megan with anybody. And Caitlin Ammons tells me she's done with basketball because of an injury. But then you have Angela Madish comes back next year. Journey Kiaku comes back. Rami Queta comes back. Gabby Grantland-Medley. Raina Green is young. Nadia Moore, the freshman. Mackenzie Blackford. We mentioned all those great freshmen. So the future is very, very bright, I think, for the women's team as well. You know, the all-world Megan McConnell hopefully is playing in the WNBA next year, and maybe we'll get to see her coming through Pittsburgh sometime if we end up getting a WNBA team. But yeah, really, really fun to watch. They're worth the price of admission. Any other last thoughts, anyone on the women's team before I move into some football news?
I
Not
did.
on the- Go ahead,
Sorry.
Nick.
All right, I did want to shout out when the game was tighter at end of the first quarter. Coach Burt subbed in Journey, who sprinted down the floor for a layup to end the quarter. It's great whenever you have a plan come in and it actually work flawlessly like that. It obviously turned into a blowout today, but I did really like to see that addition and then just the play work instantly. It does seem like that screw up where end of game scenario that we talked about months ago at this point. They've really learned from that and figured out different ways to get people involved to catch teams off guard.
And
Very-
this isn't talking about the play of the women or anything, but as I was preparing for our podcast today, I was just seeing that VCU head coach Beth O'Boyle was not able to make the game earlier this week because she had her baby with her partner. So I do think that just a congratulations is in store for her. Obviously, a opponent team, but you know, exciting life news for a head coach there.
Very cool. Thanks for pointing that out. Okay, let's move into some other news around the athletics department. A little bit ago, we mentioned, of course, the Duquesne football team will play at Pitt. That's a pretty cool deal on August 30th to open the season for both Duquesne and Pitt. Some other big football news recently is that the Dukes added a couple of gritters, one gritter individually to the DU Sports Hall of Fame in the latest class. So that class was inducted over the weekend, and the Duquesne Dukes, Eric Vaccarello, who played from 86 to 90, joined the Hall of Fame along with the 2018 Duquesne football team. The 2018 Duquesne football team was the first and still only team to have won an NCAA playoffs game, defeating nationally ranked Towson back in 2018. The Dukes were NEC champions that year as well. So some football news entering the Hall of Fame. If you don't know much about Eric Vaccarello, you might recognize the name Vinny Vaccarello because the Duquesne University athletics department used to have this Vinny Vaccarello. It's a memorial golf outing, a way to raise funds to remember Vinny Vaccarello, who died unfortunately in a plane crash in Florida some years back, much too soon. Was the loss of Vinny Vaccarello. That was back in 2012. And to honor him, his brother Eric, who now joins Vinny in the Duquesne Sports Hall of Fame, started this golf outing in his honor. These guys were stalwarts on defense for the Dukes in the 80s. Vinny Vaccarello and Eric Vaccarello had 79 and 78 tackles, respectively, in 87 and 88. And that ranks as second and third, respectively, for a single season in the history of Duquesne football. Those are solo tackles. For his career, Vinny Vaccarello has 248 solo tackles. That's also second all time. And for career tackles overall, Vinny Vaccarello leads Duquesne all time. Eric Vaccarello, by the way, for season tackles, even though these guys played in the 80s, he's still on that list. Eric Vaccarello is still 10th all time in tackles for a season. So people remember the name Vinny Vaccarello a lot for all of the records. Again, first all time assisted tackles in a season, assisted tackles in a career, total tackles in a season. And total tackles in a career. So Vinny's the big name, but Eric was quite a player as well, who's also on these leaderboards. So Eric joins the Duquesne Duquesne Sports Hall of Fame as an individual with his brother. And again, as a team, the 2018 football team has been inducted. The other inductees this year include swimmers Scott Darwin and Christina Sherrard-Nielsen. And Jim Spizak from the cross country and track and field team is officially in, although Jim Lear, who was a guest on this show earlier, actually broke that news. And a builder, Dan Unico, has also been inducted, as well as the 2015 women's soccer team, which was the only A10 championship, postseason tournament championship that Duquesne has had. So congratulations to all of them. Coincidentally, that brings up, we were going to mention men's and women's tennis as our Olympic or non-revenue sport to highlight this week. So I wanted to point out, who is this Rinaldo Acri guy who ended up getting inducted into the Hall of Fame as a men's tennis player? Well, Acri actually is still on the leaderboard all time at Duquesne for singles wins. So Rinaldo Acri won 56 matches from 1979 to 1982. So when he was done playing, that was the record. And Acri, although he finished playing in 1982, is still 9th all time in history of Duquesne athletics in men's singles wins for tennis. 9th all time. Everybody above him has played in the 21st century. So, I mean, the leaders are all like, you're looking at 2016, 2008 and 7 maybe, but like a long way. So that's how much of a standout Acri was amongst his peers at Duquesne as a tennis player. So it seems like something that was probably long overdue to induct Acri. In addition to having that record when he retired, he was also a recipient of an NCAA postgraduate scholarship. Sounds like he was a terrific overall student athlete. So congrats to him, to Eric Vaccarello, to all the teams and other athletes who were inducted. I think that's really cool. It's always fun to look at Hall of Fames guys and look at teams and individuals who might also have a case. So I want to ask you guys, maybe if there's, as far as football goes, or any of the other Olympic or non-revenue sports, and hell, we can even toss in some basketball names, maybe who should be in next year's class. I don't know if anything jumps out at you guys. If you want to offer thoughts about the Vaccarello brothers or this year's class, or maybe look forward, I'll go to Nick first.
Yeah, I mean, my note is kind of superficial, but shout out to WWE superstar Luca Crucifino, which was actually the name tag given to him for being an inductee.
Get out of here. That they had Luca Crucifino on the tag.
That was on the name tag, yeah.
Well,
so
see, you got to keep up K-Fob. You can't put just everyone. His real name is Roman Masick. He was a student of mine. Yeah, he was on that team that won that 2018. In fact, there's a great picture. I might know what I'm talking about, Nick. When Duquesne won that championship, Roman Masick, who was a D lineman, held up like this championship belt on the field, to celebrate. And it was some foreshadowing for what ended up being his career.
Yeah, and I mean, Royal Rumble weekend was this weekend, so I'm sure it was just a great weekend for him as a whole. But yeah, that was the coolest moment that I saw from the 2018 class.
Hey, Andrew, would you consider, if you had a vote, a guy who went to professional wrestling as a possible inductee as an individual? Because we've inducted John Clayton, who didn't play sports at Duquesne at all, and he didn't cover Duquesne sports directly like a Ray Goss, who got inducted. Of course, he just went off to be a very notable ESPN personality. I think that makes some sense. But how about a guy who's playing a sport or sport adjacent with pro wrestling, maybe getting that honor one day?
I still think that to me, that is still important. I mean, you're able to turn something from your athletics. I mean, these guys are still athletic in the WWE. They've still got to be able to do their sport, their brand, all of that. So I do think that is Hall of Fame worthy. And shout out to the late John Clayton. I had him as a professor back in 2014 with Shelly Anderson, and he was incredible. And all of those accolades for him absolutely deserved.
Yeah, John was an adjunct for us, right? I think actually my first year was his last year adjuncting for us. And yeah, the professor was his nickname. It made sense. We actually finally got him in the classroom. He's a Duquesne Media alumnus as well, like you and I. as well as Bill Hillgrove, whom I think might actually be worthy of induction as well. He's in every other Hall of Fame. We know Ray Goss, another Duquesne media alumnus, has already been inducted. I think we've also talked about Alex Panormius on here because of Alex's long tenure with women's basketball and with football. He's kind of the voice of both of those teams. Rudy, any other thoughts on Duquesne Hall of Fame?
Well, I'm not privy to like being living locally and knowing all these names. I'm sure I know of Clayton. The thing, yeah, I just shout out to the tennis players. That used to be my sport when I was growing up. I was a big Jimmy Connors and John McEnroe fan, and I played it intramurally in college. I don't think we had did we have a tennis team back then?
That's a great question because,
I don't think we did, because I would have tried out for it.
yeah,
Anyway.
right. Maybe, one day we'll probably have a pickleball team, and I'm going to try to get my hat in the ring there because, talk about a growing sport.
Yeah, as far as the Hall of Fame is concerned, I'm, being from afar for such a long distance, all these years, I'm not privy to the, to what's going on. So I'm gonna have to beg out on that.
Well, here's a trivia question for you. So there's two athletes in the history of this university who were first team all conference in two different sports. I don't know if you guys know, and we're not counting cross country and track as different sports. If you consider those one sport, there's only two guys in history that were first team all conference in multiple sports. You guys know who they were? See, of course, everybody knows that one of those guys is Robert Healy III. The other guy is Lee Bodden, whom no one's ever heard of.
Lee Bodden. I've heard of Lee Bodden.
What was Lee's other sport? Was it track?
Lee and I were both conference champions in first team all conference in track and in football. So we're the only two guys. I think it's pretty cool. I love that. I throw that out there because everyone's heard of Lee. But yeah,
I did not know that about you, dude.
Oh yeah, man, you got to Google it. I was hoping you would have just said Bob Healy. I was throwing to you. I should have queued you up. No, it's pretty. I love the Hall of Fame stuff. I'm a big fan of the history of Duquesne. Of course, you can just see behind me how much of a big fan I am of of our history. And one day, maybe we'll be inducting Andrew Havranek as a media member. You never know, or a Josh Taylor or something like that. Some of our friends. Oh, speaking of tennis, by the way, I do want to mention one more thing about. One more Hall of Fame note. Awesome, Jim Spizak made it. That was overdue. The 2005 men's cross country team was the first Atlantic 10 team championship Duquesne had won of any kind since the 1977 team won the Eastern Collegiate Basketball League, which was the forerunner to the Atlantic 10. So I think the 05 cross country team to me is the next team that deserves it. And I was on a couple of football teams in 02 and 03 who have not also been inducted. The 02 team was 11-0 and was ranked. It's to this day the highest ranking Duquesne ever had in all of 1AA. And we lost a bowl game in the snow in Albany. It was like 50 degrees or 50 mile per hour winds, negative wind chill. And it was just, we lost the game on the coin toss. But the next year, my team won the whole mid-major national championship. And I've always pushed for one or two of both of those teams to make it. So there's some other candidates out there. It's hard to make it in there. Obviously I'd love to be in myself, of course. Everyone who ever played sports wants that honor, but it's the people who've all been inducted, I think, are very deserving. So congrats again to all of them. And speaking of tennis, the tennis teams recently announced a partnership with the Oxford Athletic Club. The Oxford Athletic Club it's a health and fitness facility located in Wexford. And the Oxford Athletic Club is now the official home court of Duquesne tennis. So it's considered, Duquesne Athletics Department says it's a premier destination known for its state-of-the-art fitness facilities, has a wide range of group classes and racket sports. And so the AD Dave Harper said he's thrilled to announce this partnership. Apparently it's a really, really big deal for the Duquesne tennis program, which is going to play 10 matches on their home court this season, including 5 in a row in February, 6 A10 contests overall. The men's tennis team will next be in action, on February 2nd, today at 2 p.m. So we need to check out I didn't get any results on that yet, but they were playing Ashland actually at the Oxford Athletic Club. So it started here this month. The women's tennis team usually plays a similar schedule. So they were also home today versus Ashton. I do have a result for that one. The women's tennis team did win 7-0. But they do have conference play coming up. And we'll see at the end of the season, at the end of the spring, how these teams end up in A10 play. The Atlantic 10 Championship is April 23rd through April 27th. And that is both for the men's and women's tennis clubs. I beg your pardon, April 24th through the 27th for the women, and it's April 23rd through the 27th for the men. But they are both at Orlando, Florida, at the USTA National Campus. So that's your update on the Olympic non-revenue sports. We'll highlight another one next week. But for now, we're gonna go off the air and publish this on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. It really helps us. We are looking for sponsors. That'll help us get better guests and commit even more to the show. So you can reach out to Healy971 at duq.edu. That's HEALY 971 at duq.edu. Again, like and subscribe and share. Thoughts on anything today? I'm going to go around the horn for final thoughts. You guys have heard enough from me. I'll start with Rudy.
Well, like I said, we just have to play as a team. And Drew's got to find a formula, and we just got to go from there. The women just keep on keeping on. They've been playing tremendously. I think that they can literally beat anybody in the conference, and I think that they're going to be at the top of the conference once they go into the tournament. They're playing really well. I don't know what the schedule looks like on who's better than us, that has a better record than us. But, I think that we're going to be at the upper echelon of the league, and we're going to go into the tournament as maybe one of the top 4 teams. So, and get a double bye. Hopefully that's what they're shooting for.
Dukes are chasing Richmond and George Mason and St. Joe's, who sit at 9-1, 9-2, and 9-2. But yeah, once you get that double bye, it's obviously what you want. Anything could happen. Nick.
Yeah, my final thought's going to be on women's basketball as well. I think it would be great if the Duquesne community could really push to at least send off the Megan McConnell era with a lot more fans. They did a promo, I think it was Tuesday night, for students to show up, and it wasn't as attended as I thought it might be. So it would be nice to really show up and show out for the team that has, I think, the best chance of winning the A10 tournament this year for Duquesne.
And our esteemed guest, thanks again, Andrew, for joining us. We'll give you the final word.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. Just a couple quick thoughts as we end here. The men are going up against Richmond as their next game. Richmond has lost 7 straight. If there's a chance to get this ship righted and sort of get back on track, it's this next game. Offensively, being able to score a little bit more, improving on some free throws, as we've talked about earlier in this podcast. I think this next game is sort of a critical moment, if not maybe critical in just the result aspect, but the mentality aspect of, making, when you're a member of a team like that, to just be able to, kind of break that train that you're on when you're just losing and on that skid a little bit. But my other thought here is just Mackenzie Blackford, man. Incredible. Very impressed by her. And, I know we're ending the sort of McConnell era here at the end of the season, but looking forward to what the women are able to do here. As I said earlier, they're sort of the bright spot, and I'm really excited for that.
Andrew, I want to thank you personally for having the wherewithal as a reporter to grab your cell phone and record me getting up on a stage at Mike's Beer Bar and trying to offer an Irish wake when the Dukes were losing to the Illini, because I know you were there too, and I'm thinking, like, we were down because the basket had a lid on it for us that game, and nothing was falling our way. But that was to me a moment to celebrate as a Dukes fan. And I didn't want to see that place quiet going out. And I thought, being Irish and being at a few of those wakes, I'm going to get up there and we're going to cheer this team on. And thanks for capturing that moment for me, and keeping that video, because I asked you for it a couple weeks ago and you turned up with it. So awesome, man. I appreciate your instincts on that. Maybe we'll be back at Mike's Beer Bar again, come March. So, guys, shoo, rah, rah. Keep the faith. Go
Let's
Duquesne.
go Dukes.
Thank you,
Go
boys.
Dukes.